Well, hey everybody, it's Mark with you again from beautiful Boise, Idaho, where the sky is blue and the breeze is warm. Why would you want to be anywhere else? You may have already seen my first couple of videos. Well, hold on to your hearing aids because you're going to be seeing a bit more of me around here. I'm happy to say that I'm going to be joining Nick and Jeff on the ZipHearing YouTube channel, and we're going to be bringing you reviews and news and tech and anything that is of value to you and your hearing journey. So Jeff asked me to take a video and introduce myself, and I can hear it like it was yesterday. June 5th, 1970. The release of the most consequential rock and roll album of my life. Deep Purple and Rock. And it was all downhill from there. Believe it or not, my hearing journey did begin way back in the groovy 70s with that one album by Deep Purple. I would literally lay on the floor of my bedroom and I would place one speaker on either side of my head and I would turn up that volume as loud as my parents would allow. Yeah. Now I know what you're thinking. The 70s? He looks like he could be Jeff's slightly older brother. When I got married in 1975, the very first thing my wife and I did was we went out and we purchased a really snazzy Marantz stereo system. It had killer speakers and awesome rockin' headphones. And true to form, I would go in and I would lay down on the living room floor and I would put one speaker on one side of my head and the other speaker on the other side of my head, and I would blast that sound into my brain. Now, there are people who will tell you that that sound pumping into my brain did a lot more to me than just wreck my hearing, but I'm not going to go there. After a brief foray into fast food management, my wife and I decided that we wanted to go into business for ourselves. So in 1977, I started Mark's Lawn Care and I worked for 12 years. I worked that business. If you think lawn equipment is loud now, back in the late 70s, noise abatement, nobody even cared. So I worked for 12 years with that really loud equipment just feet from my ears with absolutely no kind of hearing protection whatsoever. Now, I'd been a singer and a guitar player from pretty early on in my life, and I started learning sound engineering and recording in my early 20s. And like most musicians that I know, the louder the better. And any kind of sound protection, hearing protection meant killing the music. What I didn't know was how badly the music was killing my hearing. In my late 20s, I was offered a position as a worship leader in the church we were attending at the time, and I began to engineer their radio broadcasts and I emceed several radio programs. But the real damage to my ears began when I took a position as a worship pastor for a congregation nearby. I'd heard of something called in-ear monitors. Now, when you do stage work, usually there are great big speakers on the ground, and those speakers are blasting back at the performers. This was in the old days, which just added to the overall sound in the room. And I thought, I could have the monitors directly in my ears. What a great idea! Actually, it wasn't a bad idea. It was just badly implemented. It was the misuse of those in-ear monitors that really did my hearing in. After several events, I would come off the stage and I'd have ringing in my ears that would last sometimes for days. There were even times when the sound was so loud in my ears that I would come off the stage and I would be dizzy. And I knew that it wasn't good for me, but I never really realized the extent of the damage, that it would be so excessive. But it wasn't before long that I realized that I was really in trouble, that I was having trouble understanding people in normal conversations. And so I had my very first audiology visit in 1977. I went in and I said, "I'm having trouble understanding my wife." And he said, "Is that a bad thing?" And I said, "Well, yes, it is, because I love my wife and I would like to be able to carry on conversation." So the audiologist, of course, suggested that I get some hearing aids. But when he began to lay out and tell me the price of the hearing aids, I almost fell off my chair. And this was back in 1997. But it wasn't until 2016 that I finally decided I needed to do something. Now, I still couldn't afford the prices of the hearing aids that were on the market at the time. So I went for over-the-counter hearing aids and I began using Eargos, which many of you are familiar with. My hearing at that time was severe loss in the left ear and moderate in the right ear. Now, why the difference between the two ears? Well, it was because I had begun the habit of using in-ear monitors in only my left ear so that I could hear the singers who were always on my stage right. Now, while the Eargos were not inexpensive, they were far less than getting a real pair of prescriptive hearing aids. So when I finally decided that I was going to have to shell out the big bucks for getting my hearing properly corrected, I began doing research and I found ZipHearing quite by accident. And when I did, like many of you, my first thought was, too good to be true. I tend to be very cynical. I gotta say that I had my doubts, but once I connected with Grant, who is one of the reps at Zip, my doubts began to fade. He never once tried to sell me on anything. He never once tried to hard sell me or upsell me on anything. He understood I'd done my homework and he respected my opinions, and he never tried to say, well, these would be way better for you, and steer me in a particular direction, which I really appreciated. Finally, my fears were completely alleviated, and I realized that what Zip was selling was not knockoffs or seconds or anything like that. I tend to be very cynical, but that was the real deal at a great price. I had been quoted by an audiologist in town almost $10,000 for the same hearing aids that I got for far less from Zip. In fact, through Zip, I was able to get my Starkey Edge AI 24s, which is the highest level that they have of technology, with custom ear molds that the audiologist wanted to charge me $800 for. And I bought 2 TV streamers for less than half the price that the audiologist had quoted me. I think that's pretty amazing and a really, really wonderful, wonderful deal. So here I am now, really happy with my choice and very happy to be joining Jeff and Nick on their YouTube team. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to steer you towards any particular manufacturer or hearing aid. I'm here to help you make informed decisions about what is best for your hearing health. I'm really looking forward to being here with these guys and making videos that help you make informed decisions. And if there's anything in particular that you would like to know or that you'd like us to speak to, that's why we're here. Be sure to leave us a thumbs up and to subscribe if you just can't wait to see where we're going to go from here. In the meantime, I will see you next time. Bye.